everyone. Welcome back to Reddit Affair Diaries. How's your day going so far? I hope it's been great, but if not, don't stress, you're in the perfect spot to relax and dive into some juicy relationship stories. There's always something new and unexpected waiting around the corner here. Before we jump in, leave a comment and share something good from your day. Let's keep the good vibes going and start this story together.
This Reddit story is from the r/relationship advice subreddit, where the OP's stepdad is in love with him.
I'm 22, and I've had a stepdad for around 12 years now. I believe he's in love with me. This is a very intense assumption, but I'm not a delusional woman that likes the drama that comes with such attention. He has been diagnosed with MS, and a form of Parkinson's. Recently, he only has a couple years left to live. With this diagnosis, his behavior has been more apparent in contrast than within the past few years, because I've always have had a suspicion. He has his own kids, 4 of them, and I have 3 sisters, and his attentions has always gravitate towards me. Him and my mother don't share any kids. I'm the youngest BTW. He's a shy man, who keeps to himself, but in slick ways he has always made it apparent I'm his favorite. This was usually made clear through my mother. She has made comments on how he always talks about me, how proud he is of me, and how beautiful and smart I am. Pretty innocent, huh? But my mom is a very accommodating woman. She goes along with him to please him, and I'm pretty sure it goes right over her head, like everything with her. But it goes even further. He texts me unusual stuff sometimes. He mentions how he sometimes stares at my profile picture to admire me. He calls me his princess, his little 1-inch, and many other things that come across very flirtatious. He never does this when anyone else is around, so usually over text. I'm certain of the fact that he doesn't call his own kids or my sisters anything similar. He only does this with my mother as well, but not even that direct and flirtatious with her. It's bizarre. He's a simple, unromantic man. It's something he doesn't even do within his own relationship, so why with me? Recently he saw me wearing one of his old sweaters he gave to my mom because I was cold, and when he got home he texted me. He loved seeing me wearing his clothing, which I didn't know how to respond to. Over the years he was planning to immigrate to Canada, and he had always made the comment, but only if the little one comes along with us. And he was very serious about it as well. Looking for universities for me, and making plans for my paperwork even before I even agreed on joining them. Which isn't that weird, but I'm a grown woman and he doesn't need for me to tag along like I'm a kid that's dependent on them. If I was still underage, sure, they should think and take care of me, but that isn't the case. My other sister also still lives at home, and he never had the intention to take her as well, which made it apparent he only wanted me to go with them. To make the situation even weirder, he once made the comment/joke, "Let's just leave your mother behind, let's just do it, you and me." My mother wasn't present, and it felt like the joke had a hidden meaning. He was very pushy about it and never truly asked me, but simply made the assumption I wanted to go with them. The rare moments I'm alone with him were moments when the tension were high within the household. He doesn't live with us and he never has, so I usually see him on the weekends when he comes to pick my mom up, but when my mother and I, or my sister and I, had arguments, I was usually the one to walk away to go to my room. He would come to my room to ease the tension and fix it. One time I was having an argument with my sister. I was sitting on my balcony and he came to talk to me. After some conversation, I got emotional, which I rarely am. I cried and he comforted me, which is also very rare because it's not often that I'm vulnerable in front of another. He hugged me, which never happens because I'm not an affection person. I accepted it though because he meant well. When he pulled away, he stared into my eyes and cupped my face. It was at night and we couldn't see each other that clear, but I could swear on everything he had the intention to kiss me. I felt overwhelmed, pulled away, and started the conversation almost instantaneously to ease the awkwardness, and we never spoke up about it. I'm a very private person, so I rarely speak about my love life, but on the rare occasion that I do, I usually got comments like, "You are such a smart and pretty woman, you should have a man like insert things he is like himself." I have many other things to push my point, but to come to my question, he lives further away from us, but because of his condition he wants to move. Which I don't look forward to at all. He wants to get an apartment on the same street as us, to be close to my mom, so she can take care of him. This is understandable, but last night I got a text that he had only sent to me and not my sister or my mother, going on about how he's doing this to be close to me and so I can easily come to visit him before his condition becomes, well, his unfortunate death. I think this diagnosis is fading away his morals and he is getting more outspoken about his feelings for me because of it. I can't talk to my mother about this, I just can't. I wouldn't be able to tolerate him living so close by. He would expect a lot of attention and it would make me very anxious. He is a very egotistical man beside him being kind and would take it as an offense if not all attention would go to him within these circumstances. His feelings for me are strange and inappropriate, but I would get nothing out of it to speak up about them. I can tolerate it, but only if he lives as far away as he does now. Please give me advice. My mother is helping with his move and like I've said before, I'm dreading it. Relevant comment by Reddit users. You're 22, not 16. You have a lot of independence now. Are you finished with school? What is your career? Do you have plans to pursue that more? Focus more on embracing your independence, moving out of the family home. I know, this economy is thought and you shouldn't have to because he makes you uncomfortable. However, this is the one thing you may have a little more control over, especially where you can't necessarily discuss this with your family right now. Response by OP. You're right, but the house market within my country is the worst it has ever been. Housing is almost impossible to get, especially as a broke student. Living at home is the best financial option. I'm still doing my bachelor's but eventually want to do something with neuroscience. I have a bright future ahead, even if I say so myself. But it takes a lot of hard work and living at home gives me the most comfortable environment to work hard. I can't complain about the situation and make the decision to not speak up, while wanting to stay at home, so I understand your question completely. I'll have to look into moving myself if I'm making the decision to not speak up. I just feel as if I've always had to toss and turn to make others comfortable when the problems lies within others, their strange behavior that causes issues, that counts for everyone for my family. So it feels very overwhelming. Comment. It seems this man made you his last wish. Let's see. You cannot talk about it with anyone else, but if he opens the private line of communication sending those weird messages, I believe that's your only shot at making him stop. You can express more freely how unpleasant his messages are, and he will never dare to tell that to your mom or anyone else because he will be forced to explain what created that response. I don't think you have any other choice. Response by OP. You're right. Texting him to keep his feelings and comments for himself might be an option, but that feels so wrong to say to a man that's literally dying. His condition is getting worse by the day, and even though it's extremely inappropriate what he does, I feel empathy towards him. I do believe this to be an option I haven't thought about though, thanks for that. I'll think about it. I may speak up about it through texts and to maybe make clear I'll visit him, but on my own terms and to keep it between us to not hurt my mother's feelings. At the end of the day, I don't want him to go with hard feelings between us. He's not a bad man, that I know, but I won't just go along with it without protecting my own well-being. Thanks.
Our next Reddit story is from the r/2hottakes subreddit, where the OP's stepdad revealed his love for them.
My 30F stepdad, 58M, confessed to me that he is in love with me. This happened 3 years ago. For context, my mom and stepdad got married about 10 years ago. My mom and I are not close. She walked out when I was 4 and had me on weekends, but I spent 80% of my time with her parents and my aunt as she was too busy with whoever she was dating at the time. I was raised by my dad's parents because my dad was too busy working all the time. I come from a very strict German family that are basically like Vulcans and show very little emotion. 3 years ago I tried to unalive myself due to an abusive relationship and I ended up moving in with my mom temporarily so she could help with my son while I was in treatment. This is when everything with my stepdad started. After I got out of the hospital, me and him got close. Every day for 3 months he would drive me to and from outpatient therapy and we would just talk or listen to music. Harmless. When I had meltdowns he would talk me through it and be a shoulder to cry on. Harmless. We would go on hikes together with my son because my mom has health problems and would opt out. Again harmless. Or so I thought. In my head, it felt like I finally had a dad that showed me love and attention. I even gave him a card for Christmas asking if I could call him dad and he cried and said yes. I was overjoyed. I finally had a bond with a parent that I've never had before. Boy, was I wrong. Now let's bring in my now boyfriend Z, 24M. He worked with my stepdad and he brought him over one day and me and Z hit it off instantly. We hung out and talked for hours. My stepdad started getting protective and I just read it as being a dad. Well, one night we went out carp shooting like we normally did and that's when my stepdad confessed his love for me. He wanted to know if I felt the same way and said he wished he was 20 years younger. He also admitted that his tears over my Christmas card were tears of sadness that I saw him only as a dad. I awkwardly told him I just saw him as my dad and that night I cried myself to sleep in Z's arms. Have I told my mom? No. She has a long history of choosing partners over me. So much that her ex-GF's son essayed me and she took his side over mine. So telling her isn't going to do shit. I just had to get this off my chest. Relevant comment by Reddit users. That he fell in love with you doing normal father-daughter activities is wild enough, but I can't believe he confessed his love to you after you gave him a card confirming you see him as your dad. That is insane. After that card he should have taken those feelings to the fucking grave. Response by OP. You definitely aren't wrong on that one. He even asked me first if I see him as more than a dad and I said no. Like more than a dad. He's also got a weird physical relationship with her bio daughter who is 2 years older than me. She would sit on his lap and be like, "Dad, do you like my new bathing suit? My boobs actually fit it nice, see?" Comment. Yeah, that is ridiculous. I can almost imagine a version of this story that's more sad/pathetic than creepy or disgusting. But that version ends with stepdad burying his feelings, getting counseling, and never saying a word about his nasty crush after that card. The bit about his bio daughter is super ick. That alone makes me wonder if there isn't something more nefarious going on. My younger sister, 24, was very cuddly and very much daddy's little girl growing up, but I can't imagine her sitting on our dad's lap now. Especially in a swimsuit face vomiting.
This Reddit story come from the r/trueoffmychest where OP's wife spent the night with another man. Sorry for the long post. I will try to make this as short as I can while giving as much relevant information as possible. I've never posted on Reddit before, but I've been lurking since this happened. I'm hoping hearing some words of advice or support might help. It's been about 3 weeks since day when I found out my WW of 20 years cheated on me when she had a night out drinking with some colleagues from her previous workplace. We are both in our 40s. So far I've not found it any easier to function with the feelings I have and still feeling physically unwell with headaches, stomach discomfort, tight chest, short of breath. Backstory. We recently sold our house to move closer to the city and teenage kids' school. Our relationship hadn't been very good for a while, and we were both not treating each other very nice and had agreed to separate for a bit with a view to reset our marriage while my wife rented with the kids and I chose to stay with her father. One of the kids actually asked why we were separating and was it because of cheating, and my wife told them, no. If something like that happened, we wouldn't be planning on getting back together. The plan was to buy another house within 6 months and move back in together. It was after 2 months apart, although still seeing each other almost every day, that this happened. During this time I worked hard on myself and did all I could to make our relationship better. taking her out on dates, inviting to go for walks, tidying her house, cooking dinners, etc. That night, I kissed my wife goodbye as she left and told her to have a fun time. I stayed home with the kids. She ended up coming home around 5 a.m. hungover, and I took care of her. She told me they all went back to one of her colleagues' house and she ended up asleep on the couch. From the way she was acting after that night, my intuition told me something had happened. It took a couple of nights, but she eventually come clean because I kept asking questions. She told me if I hadn't have kept asking, she would never have told me because it meant nothing and she knew how hurt I would be. When she came clean, she told me that after she had been dropped back off at home around midnight, instead of coming inside, she called her colleague and asked if he wanted her to come around for romance, and he agreed. She walked into his house. They kissed and undressed while making their way to his bedroom, but stopped before having romance because she felt sick and knew what she was doing was wrong. He also has a girlfriend that was away for the night. She ended up laying naked with him all night and got up and left in the morning. I'm told they did nothing else. I know how ridiculous and unbelievable that sounds, and obviously my trust is gone, and I didn't accept that and thought she was just trying to minimize. But after many conversations so far, I think maybe she might be telling me the truth. Not that it makes much difference. She laid this out all at once and the story hasn't changed. She hasn't trickled any more details. She acknowledges the fact that she had every intention of romance and that not having romance doesn't make it any better. After I found out, she was very remorseful, guilty, knows how hurt I am and is certain she wants to reconcile and be with me. She admitted there was no seduction involved on his part and that it was entirely her decision to do this, and she can't give me any explanation as to why she did it. She says she doesn't expect the AP will try contacting her again and that she will tell and show me if he does. She has never tried making excuses or justifying and says nothing like this has happened before and assures me never again. We've always had access to each other's phones and are always checking locations to find the kids, etc., and nothing has raised any suspicions in the past. I'm so broken and can't make sense of my feelings. I never reacted angrily towards her and have decided to move back in now to start R because I felt so alone and was afraid I might hurt myself sitting alone every night with no one to talk to. I was clear that if there was anything else she needed to tell me about then, I needed to know now and not find out later. Once again, she told me nothing else had happened. I never thought I would be willing to stay together if this ever happened to me, but now it's real. It's not such an easy decision to make. Nobody else knows what has happened, and the only support I have is from my WW. She has organized CC, which begins in a couple of weeks. I'm thinking now, though, moving back in has made her think I'm feeling better, and I get the feeling she has already begun to move on while I'm feeling no better about myself at all. We talked about it a lot to begin with in the first couple of weeks, but now she's told me she doesn't want to keep talking about it because she hates what she did and doesn't want to keep remembering. I've agreed not to bring it up all the time until we start CC. Once again, I feel I'm working to make things better, and I'm not getting as much from her despite how badly she wants us to work things out. I'm the one that's been betrayed and think she should still be trying to show me how sorry she is. I'm very confused and don't know if I'm ever going to be able to get over this. I still can't go more than several minutes without thinking about what she did and replaying it all in my head. I didn't think she was capable of doing anything like this. I don't love her any less, and I want to be able to forgive and trust again. She tells me she wants to be with me because she loves me, but I'm afraid it's more to do with the kids and convenience. She has told me she understands if I feel the need to tell anyone else about what's happened, but I think that will just add to my shame and humiliation. Happy to hear any thoughts or advice to help me through how I'm feeling right now. Relevant comment by Reddit users. After she had been dropped back off at home around midnight, instead of coming inside, she called her colleague and asked if he wanted her to come around for romance, and he agreed. She walked into his house. They kissed while making their way to his bedroom, but stopped before having romance because she felt sick and knew what she was doing was wrong. He also has a girlfriend that was away for the night. She ended up laying on bed with him all night and got up and left in the morning. I'm told they did nothing else. I know how ridiculous and unbelievable that sounds, and obviously my trust is gone. Your wife initiated romance with an ex-coworker. You are an adult and know that two adults don't sleep together all night long without doing anything. If she were truly remorseful, she would have gotten up and left to go home instead of lying with him all night long. She can fool you, but don't fool yourself. That's the saddest thing one can do to himself. You will become a dried-up husk of a man if you pretend and go on with reconciliation. Life is short. So ask yourself whether you really believe her and want to continue with reconciliation. You know that wasted time is gone forever. Comment, nah, I don't believe a woman in her naughties would just lay there after staring at the house at midnight, then calling a colleague. I think she went straight to his house and the whole story is just damage control. You would think she would have got up, got dressed, and walked out. She knows damn well why she chose to go home with him. She wanted the forbidden tool, and sorry if this comes across as nasty. She's clocked you a long time ago. She knows how to or tries to work you, and because of your state of being, you've given her the green light that she has you. Comment, OP, she said she would understand if you wanted to tell people. You said you don't want the shame and humiliation. There has to be consequences for her actions. Make her tell both sides of the family what she has done. Two adults don't kiss, take off all their clothes, and lie shoulder to shoulder all night. Yeah, makes sense to me. Nah. OP, will your wife be willing to take a lie detector test of her events of that evening and early morning? Update me. Our next Reddit story is from the r/infidelity subreddit, where the OP discovered his wife cheating last night. I met my wife in 2011. I was DJing a social event at school and playing some 90s rocks. I was playing Third Eye Blind and my wife liked the song that came on. She talked to me, we bonded over our mutual love of the band, yada yada, we started dating. Fast forward to 2013, we got engaged and we took a trip and to celebrate. We have this memory we talk about a lot of listening to the whole Third Eye Blind catalog and singing along to all the songs together. We got married that year. Fast forward through our whole marriage, we had this thing where we would try to see the band as much as we could. We saw them whenever they were on tour, a total of 9 times during our 9 years of marriage. Last night we were supposed to see them for the 10th time. If you're the math in your head, we've been married for 10 years as well. That's coming up in November, so I had this whole thing planned where we would go see the show, stay over at a hotel, have a romantic night. I get home from work on Friday, my wife is getting ready. She looks amazing. I see a text come on her phone. You know how the rest of the story goes, I don't even want to type it. She met some guy the night before when I was away for work. The part that killed me the most was she wrote that he needed to get condoms, and he's LOL. So I'm left wondering, did they even use any? What does it matter anymore anyway? After reading that, I just left the house and started for the concert. She calls me about 15 minutes later like, where are you? Oh, just on the way to the show. What? Why? You know why? Think long and hard as to why I might be acting this way. I just hang up. Anyway, I think I was in shock still. I was pretty cool about it. But there's some backstory there I don't want to get into as to why I was prepared. She's cheated twice before in the past. I didn't really have any emotions at the time. Actually, when I started typing this was the first time I felt anything. So she calls back and starts going through the motions. Oh, we are just friends. Oh, we didn't actually do it. Oh, I was drunk. Oh, it was just in a little bit. Then it was all come back and let's talk about this like adults, as if I'm the childish one for having stormed out. I'm thinking, no. If that happens, I'm not seeing this show. We're just going to talk about how she cheated and she's going to try and seduce me, and that thought grossed me out. I never thought about romance with my wife and felt gross. But then I did. So I got to the concert and the guy scanned my ticket. He looks at me and says, "There's 2, indicating that he wanted to scan the other one. I just stared at him blankly and said, yes, there's 2, and went inside. I was so weird. I felt like I was hypnotized. And then there was the show. Amazing show. I had a good time. I met some nice people in my row and we had a fun time enjoying the concert together. Some lyric hit a little differently. I've never been so alone. And I've never felt more alive. I felt pretty alive at the concert. I danced with the crowd and screamed my frustrations into the loudspeakers. No one could hear me over the loud rock music. It was over pretty early. I wanted to sit at the bar and drink, but that would have required talking to someone, and I just couldn't outside of the context of the concert. I was thinking about the texts again. So I went to the hotel I had booked for my wife and I, and went to sleep alone. I woke up to about 30 emails. She was up all night feeling all kinds of emotions, I guess. Guilt, shame, anger at me. Those were the most surreal, the ones where she was mad at me for going through her phone. A lot of bargaining and pleading. The worst was she had sent me cards I had written for her years before. Anniversary cards, birthday cards, Christmas cards. I always handwrote a letter for her, professing my love for her. I never used to write anyone cards like these, but I did for her. She used to write cards like these for me. She hasn't in a number of years. I think her intent was that upon reading the cards, my heart would soften and I would realize how much I loved her. I would come to my senses and come to her, and we would talk it through and I would forgive her, and it would all be better, but instead it just made me realize how much she doesn't love me. At this point, I can't forgive her. I forgave her once and here we are. If I forgive her again, it's just a matter of when, not if. I'm back in the same scenario, writing sob stories on Reddit. The only question now is whether I respect myself to make sure this never happens to me again. Relevant comment by Reddit users. Actually have her served divorce papers at work. Attach a card onto the rolled-up divorce papers with a rubber band. The server put the package in her hands. The card should simply say, "It's a wrap." Response by OP. Would be sweet, but my wife doesn't even have a job. Part of the problem, she has too much time on her hands. Comment. She has a rude awakening coming. He ain't paying the bills. Life is gonna crush her. Don't take her back. Move on, do the 180/Grey Rock. Will drive her nuts. Response by OP. I expect that she'll be homeless if her parents don't take her in. Or some clueless guy. But she's got to be able to find someone other than a boy for that plan to work. This is partially my fault for enabling her. But at the same time, during our separation, my hope was that she would learn some of these skills on her own. A sort of sink or swim situation. She definitely sank. She did not handle it well. But we got back together and here we are again separated. So there's nowhere to go from here but apart. This Reddit story is from the subreddit r/tfo, detailing my experience of going to a foreign country on a second date with a woman I met on a dating app. Earlier in the year, I matched with an English woman, call him M, on Hinge, who was visiting New York City for St. Patrick's Day. Ordinarily, I would pass on these types of connections since the logistics would be too difficult to keep anything going if they were to develop in that direction. But this time I figured, whatever, we're not getting married, I can spend an hour with some random attractive stranger. We met up in Brooklyn Bridge Park and walked around Dumbo and talked for a couple of hours. Our conversation was easy and she laughed at most of the things I said. She bought me a cup of tea. We shared our Instagram accounts and we hugged at the end of our meetup. I sent her a message on Hinge thanking her for the cup of tea but didn't hear back for a few hours, so I thought, okay, that's that. I went on Instagram a few hours later and saw I had a new message from her. I was excited to see she wanted to keep talking to me. So we started texting back and forth. A few days into our text communication, things got flirty, and she sent me a picture of her wearing see-through lingerie. This was a little weird given how we barely knew each other, but I was okay with it. From then on we started texting each other constantly. I would wake up to half a dozen messages from her wishing me a beautiful morning, a small recap of how the beginning of her day went, and some pictures from her walk to work. When I texted her, she would add a little smiley face or heart or fire emoji or something else to just about every single message. So much of what I said to her was hilarious. 2 weeks into talking, she asked if I deactivated the dating app we met on and if I could imagine a relationship with her. I told her yes, not because we were dating exclusively, which I think was what she was hinting at, but because I was happy to have one person interested in me, and with the frequency of how often we were texting each other, there was no time to pursue anyone else. I didn't tell her all that, just that yes, I had deactivated the app. In the second week of texting, she told me she had plans to come back to visit New York later in the year, and I said, I can't wait that long. Let's just meet up in Bruges. This idea surprised me just as much as it surprised her. She jumped at the idea and we immediately started making plans to meet up for a long weekend of romance and pastries. Our conversations from there on included variations of, aren't we so romantic and impulsive, and isn't this exciting? I asked a couple of people if I was crazy and laid out some of the details of our one date and our subsequent communication. None of the people I talked to told me I was crazy, so I went ahead and booked a flight and found an Airbnb which I paid for with my credit card. She sent me half the cost of the apartment on PayPal. In the days after, she told me how she couldn't wait to have romance with me and she has an IUD. I tell her I dated someone with one of those and she still got pregnant. This is my way of saying I don't trust them 100% and prefer an extra layer of protection, i.e. condoms, but I don't say this explicitly. She says she's already planning our next trip in her mind to visit me in New York. A week before my long romance weekend is set to start, I schedule a session with my therapist to ask her if this is really stupid. She doesn't seem to think so, and I feel like I have advance permission to do it the day after my therapy session. Em sends me a bunch of dramatic messages saying stuff like, "This is a bad idea. I always do this where I get way into people and imagine a future together and it all falls apart and I ruin it, and no matter what happens this is going to have a bad end." I get a little shook by her sudden turn, but everything is paid for, and since it's a week out, nothing is refundable. So I try to calm her down and say stuff like, "We don't know where this is going. We want to get together again. Let's just be in the moment. I still like you and want to go on this trip with you, etc." I talk to one of my friends about this outburst and in the end decide to give Em some grace. But later that night, I can't stop thinking about what happened and decide I need to say something about how this sudden turn came out of nowhere and scared the shit out of me. So I send her a message and tell her how I feel. In the morning, I wake up to 9 messages from Em telling me how messed up it was for me to send something like that to her, knowing she would see it first thing in the morning and it would ruin her day. And she always sends me nice messages to wake up to, and I never send her nice messages to wake up to. And this is the first message I send her to wake up to? And I should know better not to do something like that to someone with mental health issues. She brings up something I said previously to her which hurt her feelings. She asked me if I could imagine a relationship with her, and I said one thing at a time. In the second week we were texting. I apologized for being cruel to her and try to calm the situation down as quickly as possible. It occurs to me that this is not a good sign. Em clearly cannot take any criticism, and it reminds me of my mom, who has her own unsorted mental health issues that have severely impacted my entire life, manifesting in depression, anxiety, OCD, low self-esteem, etc. Once things are again smoothed over, I develop a knot in my stomach and try to convince myself everything is fine, and maybe I was the asshole when I told her the things she says has an effect on me. If I bring her wild behavior up, Em says, "What, I can't have one bad day?" I say, "Sure. Okay. Can't wait to see you." 2 days before I'm supposed to fly out, she tells me she has an appointment with her body waxer and asks what kind of pubic hair I like on a woman. I tell her I have no preference. This question weirds me out. The day arrives and we meet up in Bruges. I'm so nervous to meet someone I don't really know who has exhibited unbalanced behavior, but Em is sweet, and thankfully I am still attracted to her. The knot in my stomach dissipates slightly. There's problems with our Airbnb, so we get there a few hours after we are supposed to check in, and within a few minutes we're both naked and start fooling around. She asks me if I want to have romance, and I say yes, but first I'm going to get a condom. She seems offended and asks me why. I remind her of our previous conversation re IUDs not being 100% effective. How I told her my ex had an IUD and she still got pregnant, which was subsequently terminated. During that conversation, Em told me she herself had an unplanned pregnancy a few years prior and also had an abortion. After that experience, Em had an IUD put into her body. Yes, I know all of these things, and I also know that I have only spent 2 hours in person with this person prior to today. I tell her I don't want to get another person pregnant, and ask her, "Do you want to get pregnant again?" She flips out and tells me I triggered her with my question, and starts yelling at me. She asks me, "What is the point of having this thing in my body that messes me up so much if I can't have unprotected romance?" I am not sure what is going on. I told a woman I have now spent 8 hours in person with that I want to wear a condom to have romance with her, and she is completely naked, yelling at me about it. I say I can't believe we're having this argument. I told you I got someone pregnant before that had an IUD, the same exact thing that you have inside you, so I do not trust them as an effective form of birth control. She says, "Whatever. You triggered me with your awful question about wanting to get pregnant again. Getting pregnant the first time was so traumatic, and when I got my abortion the guy didn't come with me, and I went through all of it by myself." She puts her stupid matching pajamas on, is crying, and climbs into bed. I don't know what is happening. I am so tired and just want to take a nap after my long day of plane travel. I try to calm her down and console her and say I'm such an idiot. I'm sorry I said such a boneheaded thing. She agrees with me that I'm an idiot. A few minutes later, we have romance with a condom. For days to go. Anytime we leave the Airbnb, Em immediately grabs my hand and holds onto it the entire time. She snores, so I am barely getting any sleep. I decide to give up on wearing a condom when we have romance. I know what will happen if I wear a condom, It will ruin her day. I struggle to maintain an erection when we have romance. 2 nights in we are out to dinner and I look over at M and notice she is in distress. She suddenly stands up and leaves and starts pacing back and forth outside the restaurant. I think she is having a hot flash or anxiety or something, but at this point I've decided she is overly dramatic and I don't want to get up and stop eating. M comes back in and tells me she has misophonia, and I chew with my mouth open, which is rude and disgusting, and the sound of it is very distressing to her, and asks if I can try to do better. I say, sure, I'll do my best, but she's kind of being an asshole about the whole thing, so we finish our meal, and when we ride the metro, she gets a seat and I stand behind her. A seat opens up a few feet away, so I sit down away from her and Google misophonia, and it sounds like a bummer. A disorder where certain sounds or sights trigger a flight or fight reaction, yikes. She looks up and realizes I'm not standing in the same place. Comes over and sits down next to me and says something like, "We can't sit together?" I wake up on Sunday and say thank God I only have one more day to go. At our last dinner we go out for some traditional food. While we're eating, M is being quiet and tearing up, and at this point it just seems like her usual mode of being, so I don't say anything. In my head, I'm like, well, it can't have anything to do with me. I am doing great at chewing with my mouth closed. Finally, I look up and M is furious. She says the open mouth chewing has gotten even worse, and how could I do this to her? And then she starts crying in the very packed restaurant. I am so uncomfortable and I say, "Do you want to go back to the apartment? I will take care of the check." Every time we go out into public, it seems she is going to cry. I say I don't think this is just about loud chewing. She says it's not, the trip is ending and she likes me so much and blah blah, and she ruined everything again. When we get back to the apartment we talk and I apologize for my eating habits. She says, "Oh no, I've ruined everything again." This is the 3rd or 4th time she said this phrase post-fight, and me trying to calm her down. I launch into a long explanation that I understand something of the misophonia. I have OCD and I'm lucky I've been tired this entire trip because it hasn't been that bad. And I'm not going to tell her to get therapy, but ultimately in my case I realized I have irrational thoughts and I can't take them out on other people who are clueless about them. Clearly she doesn't get my point, which is that this is her problem and she's 35 and she seems to have done nothing and has never gotten help for it. She tells me she broke up with her last boyfriend because he snored, had bad habits, and ate with his mouth open. Meanwhile, I have never seen anyone eat so much cheese, dessert, and unhealthy food in my entire life. It's midnight at this point, and her train leaves at 4:30. We have romance again. At about 1 in the morning, M is having trouble sleeping and starts thrashing around. I ask if she's okay, and she tells me she's mad she can't fall asleep and starts throwing a fit. In my 4 nights with her, and I've probably gotten 2 hours of sleep total. I'm so tired that I keep falling asleep but keep getting woken up by her constant movement. I tell her, take a break from trying to sleep. Look at your phone for a few minutes or a book or something. She says, no, I don't want to do that. I need to sleep. My train leaves in a few hours. She keeps thrashing around. I am lying next to her with my eyes open, amazed at how inconsiderate she is being. Finally, I sit up, grab a pillow and say, I'm sleeping on the couch. The couch is a love seat which is 5 feet across. I am about 6 feet tall. This obviously is not going to work, so I go back to the bed. I get maybe 1 hour of sleep. M wakes up and goes to take a shower. The bedroom we share is connected to the rest of the apartment with a giant glass window and a room darkening shade to shield it from the light. The shade had not been pulled down the previous night, and the light from the bathroom floods into the room and wakes me up. I get up, make unintentional eye contact with M in the bathroom, and pull the shade down. Right as I'm pulling it down, I can see she looks furious. Finally, she is ready to leave, and I get up to say goodbye to her. She is very mad at me for pulling the shade down and looking at her aggressively while doing it. She says, it was so rude that you made a thing about how me being awake would wake you up. I say, honey, let's not fight. Let me bring your suitcase downstairs and see you off. I go to give her the last hug I will ever have to give her, and she pulls away and only puts one arm around me. When I get back home, we're still in contact with each other. I tell my friend about the trip and she says, you need to end this. I say, yeah, I'm waiting for the right time. She tells me to do it ASAP, and since we spent a whole long weekend together, I should break the news over the phone. I haven't told her that M coerced me into having unprotected romance with her. So the next day I call her to end things. She immediately starts crying and I again try to calm her down. I tell her we obviously didn't have a good time, We have trouble communicating. I chew with my mouth open, apparently. We live thousands of miles apart. Do I really need to go on? She asks me why I don't want to stay in touch with and be friends with her. She tells me how rude chewing with my mouth open and pulling the shade down in the morning was. I get off the phone as quick as I can and breathe a sigh of relief. The next day, I wake up to a whole bunch of messages on WhatsApp about how unfair I am being to her. I block her on WhatsApp. The next day, I wake up to a whole bunch of messages on Instagram in the same spirit, so I block her there too. The next day, I wake up to a long email from her where she explains that she just realized I blocked her on WhatsApp and Instagram and she can't understand why I'm shutting her out, and a bunch of other nonsense. I block her on email, but apparently not completely. The next day, I wake up to a notification from PayPal. You have a new message. I did not know you could message people on the PayPal app. On PayPal Instant Messenger, she tells me how phony I am and how I should refund her money since I am now mistreating her so horribly. I finally write her an email telling her what she is doing is harassment and that people go out with each other and then they stop dating and there is no need for an ongoing post-mortem or name-calling and trying to figure out what went wrong. She responds, okay, you won't hear from me again, but I talked to my mom and all my friends and they all think what you did was very terrible and rude and you are a bad person. I see my therapist a few days later and tell her everything that happened. She says I wished you left immediately when Em started yelling about you wanting to use a condom. I explain I felt trapped in a foreign country and I had no idea where to go. She tells me what happened was coercion, which is a form of our *PE and I need to tell Em off for my sake. If I don't speak up and tell her how messed up this was now, I may regret it later. I draft a long email about how vile, disturbed and disgusting Em is. How if the roles were reversed and if she asked if I could put a condom on before romance and I started yelling about how I want to raw dog her and made her fear for her safety until she acquiesced, would there not be grounds for criminal charges? I send the email. The next day I get a long email back from Em about how twisted and disturbed a person I am. I can see this part in the preview section on my Gmail account. I don't open this email and figure out how to completely block her from my email account. Relevant comment by Reddit users. You should have been given different advice before going. As I stated, my situation was very similar and I had support from everyone before my trip. But I really wish someone would have told me to slow down. What's the rush? I feel like a therapist should have at least asked this question, especially after the disagreement a few days before your trip. Why did you overlook those huge red flags and go through it? I'm not going to diagnose you from this thread alone, but there's some serious red flags here that a mental health professional should have at least noticed. It's possible I'm wrong, but I recognize a lot of them. At the very least, you have some broader issues here with boundaries. Response by Op. The really wild shit didn't start happening with her until a day or two after my therapy appointment, and any other reservations I had I downplayed in my conversations with friends because I knew they would try to talk to me out of the trip if given all the information. I kept telling myself that the stuff she said was not that bad. Don't overreact. It'll be fine once I get there. My mother has borderline personality disorder and I spent most of my life blaming myself. She did too. For all the disparaging things she said to me for decades. I have grown up to be a lonely person with a severe lack of confidence I am trying to work on constantly. Given the framework of my experience, I was a perfect mark for this type of manipulation and nonsense. In hindsight, it's obvious I was being love-bombed, but I was lonely and it was nice to have the attention. When things turned, I started gaslighting myself, and then there I was in a foreign country with a deeply troubled person. Comment. Yeah, I'm waiting for the update where Em sent him an email claiming she's incredibly now pregnant.
This Reddit story comes from r/mother-in-laws from hell, where OP's mother-in-law falls in love with OP's husband. I am on here because I need to know if this is normal mom behavior and she's just protective or if she genuinely is in love with her son. I have been with my husband for 2 years. We got married 2 weeks ago. My husband joined the army in December 2022. I have always been really close with his mom. She has always felt more like a good friend. Before my husband left for boot camp, she never cared about him. She might be a great friend, but I never felt like she was a good mother to my husband. She would lock up the food in the house and only ever fed his sisters. I would buy him food most of the time and take him to work and buy him clothes too. She would start these massive crazy fights and kick him out and call the cops on us. There's just too much to get into with the way she used to treat him, but my point is she did not care about him. Once he left for boot camp, it was like a switch. All of a sudden that was her baby and she loved him more than life itself. The problems between me and her really started when we got our first family weekend with him. It was a week-long trip. Before we had left, she told my husband she didn't want me going because I would take up all his time away from her. The first day we were there, he proposed to me. The rest of the trip felt like such a nightmare. She was constantly crying the entire time. If me and him tried to get any alone time, she would get upset. We maybe got 3 hours alone the entire week. And I get that she's his mom and I wanted him to see his family as much as possible. But I felt very unwelcome and excluded because of her. She would make nasty comments to me while he wasn't around and was mad at me for dropping him off by myself one night. Anyways, after the trip was over, she ignored me for 2 weeks. Before we saw him, I'd go over to their house at least 3 times a week to talk to her. Finally, she admitted to me she was ignoring me and didn't want to see me because she was jealous of me and felt hate towards me. Because I was taking her son away from her. I was shocked because I was with him for almost 2 years before he had left and she had never treated me this way until now. Well, at our wedding she was inconsolable. She was bawling and crying the whole time and had to step away so she could calm down. I have been nothing but kind to her considering her son has moved away and got married. I understand why she would be sad. But even her husband has said to me she acts like she is dating mine. He was home for 2 weeks for the wedding and she was constantly angry with me because she felt like he was spending all his time with me. I would understand if I truly was taking up all his time. But any time we were alone, I felt guilty because I didn't want to upset his mom. When he had to leave again, we thought he might be deployed in August and I told her about me wanting to take a trip to see him at his duty station before he had to leave. She tried to invite herself along and said we could make it just me and her. I felt so uncomfortable because all I've wanted since him being gone is some quality alone time and she can't give it to us. And I thought it was very invasive to invite herself on my trip to see my husband. My husband is even annoyed by it. He tried talking to her and telling her she needs to let him go, and it's been almost 7 months now and she needs to realize he is grown and needs space. Well, that just made her even more upset and she bursted into tears. I don't know. Every time I'm around her now I feel like I have to compete with her for who loves him most, and I am starting to get jealous of how she acts with him. Every time we've visited or been with him, she's kissing him, calling him baby, posting thousands of pictures on Facebook, trying to wrestle with him, trying to cuddle with him. She truly acts like the girlfriend. Can someone tell me if this is normal? To me it's the same as leaving for college. He gets holidays and vacations. He can call whenever. Is it really that hard for a mom to let their kid go? Or is she extra crazy? Relevant comment by Reddit users. There is no need to feel guilty about spending time with your so alone and without his mother. If you need help to keep from feeling that guilt, just remember these things. 1. She starved him, locked the household food up so he couldn't get to it. But she made sure her daughters were fed. 2. She didn't have any use for him until after he enlisted. So why now? Why did that switch get flipped now? 3. She straight up told you she hates you. Why are you going to feel guilty because she boo-hoos when he wants to spend time with you, his wife? No, I'd put her on an info diet from now on. You're going to make a trip up to see him. Why does she need to know? Just go. Only tell her what you and so agree on that she needs to know. Then you silently go low contact. Comment. This is enmeshment to a wild degree. It sounds like you're onto something, and you need to follow your instincts in that this is wildly unhealthy. Your husband needs to draw hard boundaries and you both need to distance yourself from her. If she ever gets to the point where she'll accept help, she needs to see a therapist as well. This will only lead to either her being cut off or you and you're so getting a divorce, as years of this will only continuously strain the relationship. As hard as it might be, your so needs to make it clear that he is starting a new life with you, and that you and your children will come first above anything else. She will probably lose her ever-loving shit when this boundary is drawn, but she needs to recognize that he is not the one that should be fulfilling her emotional needs. That's why women have husbands. Her blurring those lines is what's called emotional incest. Seriously, read up on it. It will give you a ton of insight as to what's really going on in her head. Best of luck. Response by Op. I would also like to add she's getting a tattoo for him. None of her others, 3 kids, just him. Our next Reddit story comes from the subreddit r/2hottakes, where the OP feels his mother-in-law is a monster. I am happily married to the love of my life who happens to be the son of a monster. I wish I was making this up, but she's a full-blown narcissist parent, and this has affected me to the point I'm on Prozac and going to couples therapy often. When I met my now husband, I was a single mother working from home and living at my mom's house during pandemic. My boyfriend comes from a wealthy family and I wasn't looking good on paper, so they were mostly assholes towards me and my child. They always complained about my 3-year-old, and mostly ignored her or treat her poorly. In my head I just thought they just didn't like kids, but as time passed by, it looked more and more personal. And I was starting to get annoyed. My boyfriend and I had arguments like every couple at the beginning of our relationship because of jealousy, some exes and stuff, but we worked it out with time. The problem is that his sister asked her husband to get my boyfriend drunk and spill our personal stuff. He then told everything to his wife and she proceeded to use that as an excuse to break us up, along with her mother, who is now my mother-in-law. She even went to my mother to ask her to tell me to break up with him, and said that I pulled some witchcraft on him, making it seem that the only way I'm lovable is like that. That woman is a monster, manipulated every bit of the story. Then we decided to step away from her. She became more manic. She started complaining about how little time he spent with her, and that led to him not spending time with her at all. She pushed us away. And that's when his father started forbidding us to go to houses of his and treating us like we're non-existent. While my 4-year-old asked us all the time about them, and wondered why we weren't allowed go there. I tried to apologize and move on, and forget everything they put us through, and texted her to go 1 hour to the ceremony of our wedding. Then she was playing some mind games as if she wanted to manipulate my boyfriend again. We were so fed up, but at this point we only wanted to be together in matrimony just for us two. We even decided to make it as small as possible, because the point was to be married in holy marriage. Then I asked him if she's okay that I say hi to her during the ceremony, and she texted him saying, "Let's just go with the flow, everything is just perfect how it is." That's when I bursted laughing, because I know she had some sort of mental illness plotting going on, and I went with the flow. During the ceremony I noticed while I was walking to the altar that they didn't turn around to see me arrive. That's when I realized that I should even be looking at them, so I looked at my handsome boyfriend the whole time while I held tears in my eyes. During the ceremony and the peace offering, the priest told me to go and give the peace to my in-laws. He knows they don't like me, but due to respect I decided to go and try. Zero alternative intentions. That's when I approached her even while she was saying no to me. I told her, "May the peace be with you," and she said no. My boyfriend, now husband, looked at her with disgust and said, "Wow." A lot of people approached me and hugged me and told me they will be there for me and to sweat it. But to be honest, I'm glad that happened. Now I can finally live in peace knowing that I don't have to keep trying to be on her good side, or trying at all. We're way better off without her crazy manipulative self. So cheers to you, Brenda. How does it feel that your son, who didn't believe in marriage or having kids, decided to change his mind, and now you won't get to experience any of it? Relevant comment by Reddit users. I can tell you from experience that distance helps. My mom wasn't quite this bad, but sorta bad, so. We've always lived 5 hours away from them, by car, and it's been a lot more peaceful than it was for my brothers and sisters that stayed close. I also made clear that we'd make our own damn money and didn't need any of Tier. So we didn't get a lot of the benefits that brothers and sisters got, but today they all leave us the fuck alone. There is little drama, and a ton of respect. Comment. All you need is your husband's support. As long as you have his support, your parents-in-law might as well not exist. It is not your responsibility to make people like you. You are only responsible for doing the right things in life that make you a decent person.
This Reddit story is from the r/relationship subreddit where OP's husband is in love with his student, and she have no idea what to do.
Edit, I've decided to talk to him. I know I've been avoiding this since months, but after reading all the responses, I feel it's time I rest in peace that band-aid out. I'm going over to our house. I'll update on what happens. My husband and I, both 35-year-old, met in college. We fell in love and got married 8 years back. I gave birth to our daughter in 2020. My husband is a professor at this med school, he's a doctor himself. My friend, Sarah, also works in the same college and she's in the same department as my husband. Few months back, in December, Sarah took me out for lunch and told me that she suspected something's going on between my husband and this med student, 25F. She claimed she'd seen both of them give yearning looks to each other. She said that she's known my husband for so long, and she'd never seen him talk to any other woman like this, that he'd been so aloof around women all these years, but it's just different with this one girl. In that moment, I had laughed at her face. I remember telling her that she's jumping to conclusions based on these supposed yearning looks. That's why I didn't tell you before, she had said. I was confused too. It's not like he goes out of his way to talk to her, but whenever they do talk, it's like watching a slow burn romance movie. She looks at him like he's Brad Pitt and he looks at her the way he used to look at you. I remember the exact words because they stung. Internally I was breaking down, externally I just smiled and told her that she's probably overthinking. That night, I casually mentioned this my husband. I was laughing at the absurdity, and I expected him to join in and deny the wild possibility that he's in love with a student. But he didn't. Instead he looked at me, all teary-eyed, and said, "I'm sorry. I can't get her out of my mind. I've tried, trust me. I should have told you sooner. But I thought I could save our relationship, I really wanted to." I asked him if he'd cheated on me. He said no. He said he didn't even talk to her, nor did they have any contact outside of college, and that he completely understood how morally depraved it is to try and pursue a relationship with a student. She wrote him a letter about a year back, confessing her love for him, and he had told her that even though he was into her, nothing would come out of it. Apparently that was when the yearning looks had started. I honestly don't remember how I reacted then. I think I just started packing and came to live with my parents along with my daughter. I've been living with my parents since then. Half of me wanted him to come and beg for forgiveness. But he never did. He comes by sometimes to spend time with our daughter, but that's it. He never talks about the elephant in the room, nor do I bring it up. I keep checking that girl's social media. She's insanely beautiful, almost doll-like, and intelligent. I can't help but think that someone like him should be with someone like her. He's always been very good-looking, and I'm more of a plain Jane. She's the Meredith to his Derek. I don't know what to do. What do I even tell people? I don't even know who I am without him. Some part of me still wants him to come back. Update: my husband is in love with his student. I have no idea what to do. For those who don't want to read the boring details, in short, I have decided to go ahead with the divorce. Long story, the day I made the post, I met up with Sarah for dinner. I thanked her for telling me about my husband and the student, and also for being such a good friend. I asked her about my husband. She said there's nothing unusual. He's been a bit withdrawn and aloof with everyone lately, but that's about it. Yesterday, I went over to my house unannounced. He was there alone in his office. I told him I wanted to talk. He said he'll explain everything. So apparently this woman has had a crush on him since 2 years. Her friends ship her with him. She would stare at him during her rotations and would blush whenever he looked or talked to her. Back then, he didn't think much of it. Many girls have had crushes on him and he always ignored it. About 1.5 years back, they were in the same research group thing. I don't know how this works, but there were 5 to 6 people along with these two. Because of this, they had to spend some time together working, and it was then that he started noticing her. He went into detail about how he was impressed with her intelligence blah 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 and her beauty blah blah blah. The moment he realized that he had a crush on her, he dropped out of the research thing. This was a year ago. Few weeks later, she gave him the letter confessing that she has feelings for him. The first thing he told her after reading it was, "You can get into trouble because of this." She didn't care. She wanted an answer. "Is it all in my head?" she had asked, to which he replied with, "It's not just in your head, but nothing can come out of it. I hope you understand." That was the last time they interacted. According to him, the yearning looks Sarah described were more of awkward eye contacts than anything else. He told me that even though he is still attracted to her, he has no intention of pursuing any sort of relationship with her regardless whether we stay together or not. He said he's willing to change his job and go to therapy. I told him to give me some time to think about it. To sum up, this has been going on since 3 years. Not once did he mention anything to me. The student and him spent a considerable amount of time last year working on the research. He told her he liked her back lol. He's still very much attracted to her. And that's why I've decided to go ahead with a divorce. I don't think I can trust this man again. And a relationship without trust isn't something I am interested in. I've told my parents about it. They're not exactly on board, but they're still supportive. I've also contacted my lawyer about the same. It's gonna be a long process, I believe. That's it. I believe this is my last update.
Relevant comment. What stands out to me is he could have nipped this in the bud, since nothing could happen then when she asked if it was all in her head. He could have said yes and he has no interest, then acted completely professionally instead of sending mixed messages. If it would bother him to lie to her, well, he has been lying to you by omission for years by not mentioning this. He let this carry on and now, suddenly he can change his job and get therapy. But it seems like too little too late. I would also have trouble letting this go. Since again, the longing has been going on for years. Even if it wasn't acted on, the feelings were indulged more than they should have been, and he's only thinking of solutions to the problem now he has to rather than being proactive. I understand why this is an issue for you. Comment. This is exactly the problem. I was surprised at the people defending him in the previous thread. Sure, he did not act on it, but he still let her know he had feelings for her too, and let this weird thing carry on for years. If he was serious about his marriage, he would have told her that he didn't feel anything for her in return. Better lie to her than his wife. Go to therapy to process what happened to make him this infatuated, and would already take actions back then to nip this in the bud even if that meant a new job. He only seemed willing to make big changes after his emotional affair came to light. I totally get OP's decision to divorce.
4-month update. I can't get over my ex-husband being in love with his student. It's eating me up inside. For context, my ex-husband is a doctor and he was in love with his student for years. She was into him too and wrote him a love letter, etc. When I confronted him, he told me it was a crush and that he put a stop to it as soon as he could, and that nothing physical ever happened, but the damage was done. You can read the posts on my account if you're interested, but that's the gist. Nothing more there. So I decided to take our daughter and permanently move to my parents' house. We're in the middle of separating now. A lot of people have told me to forgive him, and I've myself debated if I'm taking the correct step or not, but the trust is gone and I don't think I want to be in a relationship with someone like him. It's taking a lot of strength to do this. I have lost all self-esteem. Fact is that I was always insecure of how my ex was way above my league, about how I was lucky to have him, how people often said he could have done so much better. Over the years, my insecurities had disappeared. Now it's all back. He's attracted to someone so beautiful, so incredibly intelligent. And obviously she's also into him. I keep looking at her social media all the time, obsessing over her. There was an Instagram story she uploaded where she was with my ex-husband and few others, and it felt like someone stabbed me in the heart. He looked happy, and he'd never looked that happy in years. I got tired of being pathetic and even complained to the hospital management about the inappropriate relationship between her and my ex. All I got in response was that they can't take any steps without concrete proof. Now my sad ass wants to snitch about her to her parents. To get her in trouble. To make her suffer. I know this is unhealthy. I'm in therapy but I don't think I'm healing. I hate that I have to be sad and heartbroken over that man and he doesn't seem to care. He stopped coming to visit our daughter too. I wish he would have cared. I wish he would have fought for me. I wish he would have not tossed aside our decade-long relationship for her. I hate this. I hate everything. Update: I found the love letter my husband's student wrote him. Should I take it to the authorities? I posted about 2 weeks back. I had to back to my ex-husband's city as per my lawyer's suggestion. My mom and sister are living temporarily with me and we have rented an apartment. Yesterday I went over to my old house that I shared with my ex to get some of my stuff. I texted him about it and he made sure he wasn't there when I arrived. I collected all my stuff. Then I decided to look through his study. Yes, I know it's snooping and it's wrong but whatever. I don't know what I expected to find there but, lo and behold, I found the letter the student wrote to him. It was callously thrown in between some of his work files. I took a picture of the letter and came back. I did read the letter, and it was nauseating to say the least. She'd written how she knew it was wrong and that he was married blah blah but she felt she had a connection with him and that she'd never forgive herself if she didn't tell him how she feels. That's the gist but it basically goes on for 2 pages. That stupid girl even made sure to sign the letter LOL. The letter confirms few things. My ex did not lie about there being no physical affair. 'Cause in the letter she was lamenting about the fact that she would love to jump his bones but the opportunity never presented. He did stop interacting with her abruptly 'cause she was sad about that too. He did lie to me about the letter. When I asked him all those months back, he told me he got rid of the letter 'cause it was of no consequence. He kept it in his study. A place where he only keeps the most important of his stuff. A place where even family pictures weren't allowed 'cause they can't let him concentrate. A place where even I wasn't allowed when he was working. Now that I have the letter, I have proof of the inappropriate conduct between a professor and a student. Last time I tried reporting, the authorities wanted proof. Now I have it. So I'm considering re-reporting the issue, with solid proof this time. I'm not gonna involve my friend Sarah in this 'cause she's made it clear that she doesn't want to be a part of this at all. One part of me wants to report them and romance with them over but the other part just wants to let it go. Any advice on how to proceed? Edit: I'm not gonna report them. It's fine. I've decided to move on. I know people think I've been overreacting with the whole divorce thing and that my ex did nothing wrong, but I stand by what I've decided. He may not have had a physical affair, but he lied to me for 3 years. That's something I can't move on from. Have I been acting a bit irrational and petty? Yes. I know that. I'm grieving. I'm sad. I know some people cannot comprehend why I can't be mature and why I'm being vengeful blah blah blah. I don't know, maybe it's the side effect of my entire life being uprooted. I was using Reddit as a source of venting, but I've realized that's not a good idea because people are quick to label a woman insecure and petty and stupid while making excuses after excuses for a man. I wish there was a better way to explain how I feel but I'm not good with words. This is my last update on this topic.